Welcome to Animeconomy. We're all about diving into the big ideas from some seriously powerful books. And today, we are tackling a text that is guaranteed to challenge everything you think you know about heroes, villains, and the world we live in.
What if everything you've been taught about good and evil was a lie? What if the villains, the outcasts, the people we're told to hate, are actually the secret heroes holding our world together? I know, it's a wild thought, and it kind of shakes the ground beneath your feet.
But that is exactly the radical idea we're digging into today. It all comes from a truly provocative book called Defending the Undefendable by the economist Walter Block. And trust me, this is way more than just an economics book. It's a direct challenge to all of us to completely rethink what justice, freedom, and even heroism really mean. All right, so let's get right into it. First up, we need to identify the people at the very center of this storm. Let's talk about society's scapegoats.
I mean, really think about it. Who are the people our society has decided are the bad guys? Who do we point our fingers at when things go wrong?
Well, the book doesn't pull any punches. It forces us to look right at the figures we usually just condemn without a second thought, starting with the prostitute.
And then the pimp, a person almost everyone agrees is just a pure evil exploiter.
Then you've got the slumlord, who gets blamed for profiting off of poverty.
And finally, the speculator. You know, these are the characters that we're basically trained from birth to see as parasites, as the bad guys, as the source of our problems.
But here's where Walter Block flips the entire script. He says these people aren't the problem at all. They're just convenient scapegoats. They're easy to see, they're easy to blame, and Block argues that if we really care about justice, we have to defend them. So how on earth could anyone possibly defend these figures? It all boils down to one single, powerful principle. In Section 2, we're going to break down what the book calls the unbreakable law, the non-aggression principle.
Okay, to really get what Block is saying, we need to be crystal clear on one word: aggression. In his world, aggression is not about being pushy or ambitious. It means one thing and one thing only: the initiation of physical violence. We're talking about starting a fight, assault, theft, kidnapping. It's about using force against someone who wasn't using force on you.
And this slide lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have violence and force. On the other side, you have things people choose to do. A voluntary trade, speaking your mind, competing in business, making a deal. None of those things involve initiating force. No matter how much you might dislike them, they fall into the non-violent camp. Now, most of us would probably agree that starting a fight is wrong. But here's the kicker. The really radical part of this book. It's about applying this one simple rule with total 100% consistency to everyone in every situation, every single time, no exceptions. And now we get to apply that unbreakable law to our so-called villains. Welcome to Section 3, Heroes of the Free Market, where we put the misunderstood on trial. All right, let's start with one of the toughest ones, the one that makes our skin crawl. Is the pimp just a purely evil exploiter? I mean, our gut screams yes, but let's pause and apply the non-aggression principle. Does the pimp, just by doing his job, initiate violence? The book argues no. Instead, it reframes the pimp's role as a service provider. A controversial one for sure, but a service provider nonetheless. Kind of like a talent agent. He finds customers, he screens them, and he provides a layer of security. As long as the relationship is voluntary, it's a business deal where both people think they're getting something out of it. And this quote just drives the point home. The book makes a direct comparison between a pimp and a Hollywood agent. Both find clients, manage the business, and take a cut. Now, I know it's a shocking comparison, but it forces you to look at the function of the job, separate from your own moral feelings about it. Let's move on to the next case, the ghetto merchant. You hear this all the time. They're accused of price gouging, of exploiting the poor. So why is a bottle of milk often more expensive in a poor neighborhood? Is it just greed? Well, the book argues it has nothing to do with evil and everything to do with basic economics. If you run a store in a high-crime area, your costs are just higher. You've got more theft, so your insurance is through the roof. You need to spend more on security. Those higher prices aren't exploitation. They're just a reflection of the real costs of doing business there. And here's the market's built-in reality check. If a store owner was making some kind of insane, outrageous profit, what would happen? Other business owners would see that, and they'd rush in to open up their own shop to get a piece of the action. And all that new competition would naturally push prices down. The fact that this usually doesn't happen tells you the profits probably aren't as crazy as they seem. Look, I know this is some pretty intense stuff. It's supposed to be. If this is making you think and questioning things you thought you knew, do me a favor and hit that like button. And maybe share it with a friend who isn't afraid to have their ideas challenged. It really helps us keep making these. All right, let's tackle our final hero for this section, the speculator. You know, the guy who buys up 1,000 concert tickets the second they go on sale, only to sell them for way more later. Isn't he just a greedy parasite who creates shortages and profits from other people's desperation? Again, Block's defense flips this completely on its head. He argues the speculator is actually a hero. Think about what they do. They buy something when there's a ton of it and it's cheap. Then they hold on to it, taking on all the risk, and sell it later when it's scarce and people really want it. What they're really doing is moving a resource through time, from a time of plenty to a time of need. This actually helps prevent massive shortages down the road. So the bottom line is this. The speculator creates value for everyone. The person who sold the goods in the first place gets a better price, and the person who buys them later gets something that might not have been available at all. The speculator is like a bridge, creating choices for people that simply wouldn't have existed otherwise. So, after looking at all these specific cases, the book zooms way out to make a much bigger point about the free market itself. In Section 4, we're going to get into the market's true nature. It's a tool, not a moral code. This right here, this might be the most important and challenging idea in the entire book. The free market isn't good or evil. It's amoral. Now, let's be super clear about that word. Amoral doesn't mean immoral. It means it operates without a moral compass. It's just a tool, like fire. Fire can keep you warm and cook your food, or it can burn down your house. The fire itself isn't evil. The morality is all about how it's used. The market is basically a giant mirror that reflects what we humans want. If people want life-saving cancer drugs, the market will find a way to provide them. If people want to buy illegal weapons, the market will find a way to provide those too. It's an incredibly powerful engine for giving people what they desire, but it doesn't judge whether those desires are good or bad. We are the ones who bring the morality to the table. And this brings us right back to that unbreakable law. Look, Block is not trying to tell you that being a pimp is a noble career path. He's not saying you should invite your local slumlord over for dinner. The argument is very, very specific. These actions, no matter how much you personally dislike them, do not involve initiating violence, and therefore, in a truly free society, they shouldn't be illegal. It's about drawing a hard line between your personal code of ethics and what should be against the law. And that line in the sand leads us to our final section, where we have to think about what all this really means for us. So for Section 5, let's explore a new vision of freedom and the heavy weight of choice that comes with it. After tearing down so many of our common beliefs, the book kind of just leaves us standing there, face to face with this enormous question. If we are really, truly free, what does that freedom demand from us? I mean, if the only job of the law is to stop people from physically hurting each other, that leaves this huge, wide-open space for the rest of life. And in that space, what is our personal responsibility to be a good person, to be kind, to be generous? Being free from the government doesn't mean you're free from moral duty. It just means that duty rests 100% on your own shoulders. And finally, think about this. Every single great innovator, every artist, every scientist who pushed humanity forward, they all started by doing something that other people hated or thought was crazy. Can we even have progress without protecting the freedom to be weird, to be unpopular, to be, well, undefendable? You know, the hero's journey is almost always a lonely one. They're often misunderstood, cast out, and hated by the very same society they end up serving. And maybe what this book is telling us is that our most hated figures, by pushing the boundaries and forcing us to really think about what we believe, are performing a kind of heroic act. Maybe the real path to a better world isn't about finding scapegoats to condemn, but finding the courage to understand them. Thanks for sticking with us through this deep dive. If you enjoyed this and want more content that challenges you, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you want to read the book for yourself, the link to buy it is down in the description. We'll see you in the next video.